This is Calvin Castine. It's Bastille Day, July 14th, 2001. And we are at the third annual Heritage Day in Lyon Mountain, New York. And this year's subject is a subject that's near and dear to the hearts of many folks, if not all, for everybody in beautiful downtown Lyon Mountain, and that is baseball. I have a long, proud heritage in baseball. In fact, the oldest picture we've seen goes back to 1881, which is 120 years ago as we're taping this. We've seen a picture of the 1881 team from Lyon Mountain. And this banner here that they won in 1946 is huge. We're in the basement at the Methodist Church, where they have a display of photos and different mementos, including a variety of hats, uniforms, and of course trophies. Actually, today's theme is bands in baseball, with the big emphasis on baseball, but there are a variety of pictures here of different bands, including some visiting bands, I'm sure. There's Happy Lemire and the crew. Country and western bands, some high school bands. Interesting school bus behind the band. It was shot inside the high school, which is now, of course, Lyon Mountain Correctional Facility. For a tour of that Lyon Mountain Correctional Facility, we invite you to see the tape that Gordy Little and I did back in 1997. We toured the Lyon Mountain Correctional Facility with a former student who worked at the prison, giving us the guided tour and reminiscing as he did it. And of course, the dominance of Lyon Mountain baseball continues to this day. Here's a picture from 2 years ago as they celebrate, and this year they have already clinched the 2001 regular season championship. There's a bunch of old timers in that photo. There's a photo of the 1967 team. Unfortunately, no names with it. Of course, is unfortunate, and I hope that that whoever owns that photo has the names written somewhere, because after a while it becomes just a picture of some old folks that nobody knows. And if you can identify them in an old photo like that, make sure to identify who's in the pictures. We've recently done a video where we talked to 6 former Lyon Mountain players, including Mr. Bob Levine, who has a high schooler, pitched a perfect game, and also talked to Tom Kowalowski, former minor league player in the Yankee system. We were talking with Tommy yesterday, and he said he'd be bringing in some autographed bats. He'd bring those in today. We didn't include that in the video that we did because he didn't mention them, but he's got autographed bats. He signed a contract with Louisville Slugger, and had a line of autographed Tommy Kowalowski bats, and he's supposed to have some of those here today. It's always fun to attend days like this, even if you're not familiar with the subject matter. Among those in attendance at this moment is Bob McGrath, who was talking to Tony Schuster, and hidden from our view is Lyon Chase. There he is. Mr. McGrath is doing a book on Lyon Mountain baseball, and he'll be giving a presentation later that we'll include as part of this program. Another one of those that we talked to is another former minor league player, Donald Pickles Tolosky. And he's among those prominently displayed here today. And also Walter Porky Bingle. There's a picture of Porky as a young man. We met Porky about 6-7 years ago. And, he included in our mining tape that we did with Bob Ben, and he was here for the baseball story too.
Oh yeah, sure. Yep.
And there's a young Slavin Chase, Charles Slavin Chase, Johnny Kowalski and Clarence Benjamin. Very nice display. It's almost sad that these displays can't be put up permanently. Every year they do such a nice job, and it's just kind of like Brigadoon. They're here for a day, then they're gone. It's, I know the Historical Association is hoping to get the old train depot and put up historical displays there, and hopefully some of this stuff would be included. Doc Marvin was a doctor here in Lyon Mountain. I guess he was from Alberg, Vermont. I didn't know that. He was mentioned prominently in our tour that we visit, I should say, that we had with those 6 former ball players. And here's a shot of the Lyon Mountain field back in its heyday, although you get some argument right now, I'm sure, from the current players that, hey, we're still having a heyday. But there's a shot of the ball field. A lot of sand piles back in those days. These old articles are always interesting, and in addition to the stories, the Ponies defeat Texaco Stars, that's Rouse's Point, Texaco Stars. There's also other things of interest in every paper you see like that, including the ads. This is, I would guess, from the North Countryman, based on the advertising. The Shazy Landing Ferry, the Lacole Inn. One thing that they did mention was that when we did that interview was that Alsable Forks was year in, year out their most fearsome rival. Here's a picture of the 1881 team that we talked to you about. 120 years ago. This year, as we're taping this, and here's a team from the early 1900s. And here's an example of a picture that wasn't marked. They have only 4 names identified. Only 4 names identified. And obviously they're looking for help in naming the remainder. And again, here's a photo with a lot of question marks. Here's a quick look at some of those hats that we talked about. Can't quite get an angle to get a front view on all of these. And there's a variety of band uniforms and baseball uniforms here, including looks like an old yearbook. Also looks like some basketball shorts.
You had them all down. And they didn't have
A miniature Hall of Fame here at the church basement in Lyon Mountain. Here's a trophy that Bob Levine's children gave him that
yeah, I saw them.
paid tribute to his perfect game.
A week ago.
Yeah, I got so much. How do you? All this in 45 minutes. So I'm going to be going fast.
Slave and Chase's uniform.
I know it.
His jacket. And even a little bit of a tribute to a man from another mining town, Johnny Padres, who went on to fame with the Brooklyn Dodgers. He came from Mineville, of course. And a couple of baseballs owned by Slave and Chase. One signed by Padres, and one by, I think, Bill Harwood, I think, is who Slavin told me was autographed that one. I'm not sure if I can get a focus on it or not here.
I saw the ball that you showed me.
Yeah,
Bill Hafer.
Bill Hafer's ball.
Bill Hafer, okay, Bill Hafer, 1936.
Oh, I just might remember. That thing's coming, Johnny.
Next up, we'll go to the slideshow. Just wanted to point out before we went to that slideshow that Bill Hafer is pictured here, and he went on to become Dean of Administration and Admissions at Syracuse University, and then president of Curry College in Massachusetts.
Hey, all right. There you go, Joe.
As to what we're doing today, amongst the speakers in the programs this morning at 11 and again at 3 this afternoon, we have a baseball game, donkey baseball game this afternoon, and of course there's Michigan's going on in the basement if you get hungry, and there's a series of pictures on the bands in baseball also on display in the basement. And then also over under this tent over here is a display of baseball cards dating way back and up to today. Our speaker for this morning is Robert McGrath. He's a professor emeritus from RPI. And it's unique, his talk today. He came up here 2 years ago, saw a baseball game at the local stadium, became infatuated with the miners, caught on, and today he's going to give you his hobby and an idea of what baseball is to Lyon Mountain and to him. So, Robert McGrath.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that nice introduction. I am from RPI. That's where I graduated from, actually, in 1956. And I went to work for Alcoa up in Messina, and played on their softball team with two North Country pitchers that some of you may have heard of. Remember Basil Curry and Bob Graham. And they were playing baseball in the St. Lawrence Valley League, and they just to stay in shape during the week they played softball, and I got to know them. So I went one weekend to watch them play, and one of the teams was Lyon Mountain. And I think I asked somebody, where is Lyon Mountain? And they described the town, and it was quite interesting. I think I just finished reading How Green Was My Valley, about a Welsh coal mining town. And I said, oh, I'd like to go see a mining town. So I came up, and I assumed it was spelled L-I-O-N. And I thought, maybe I would see a mountain lion while I was up there. And I think when I came to town, I came right down First Sweden, as Tony calls it, and it did look like how green was my valley with that ore sand piles, and I was quite intrigued then, and I didn't see any ball games though. But in 1961, this would be 5 years later, I married a girl from Saranac Lake whose mother was brought up in this town. She was Karen, C-A-R-O-N, Bellamy Karen. They lived next to the church. And so I had a little contact with Lyon Mountain. Marvin, Fishy, Karen took me on a few fishing trips. And so I got to know the town pretty well. And then really not too much happened until 2 years ago, as my introducer said, that I saw in the paper that Lyon Mountain was going for its first championship in 25 years. And I said, oh, I want to go see that. So we came over, brought my, now I guess officially ex-mother-in-law, but she came with me, 87 years old, and we sat in the stands. And the first person I introduced myself to sitting next to me was Jerry Linney. So I figured this must be an omen. I'm talking to somebody that was right here, going way back. And then I went to Platt, they won that game. Then I went against the Mud Hens. Then I went to Plattsburgh the next week to see the final, they won. And then I came back and started, I think Bill Chase suggested people for me to talk to. Bill German was one of the first ones. Then Bill introduced me to several other old ball players, and I taped them and took pictures and started going to the library, and it still continues to this day. So actually the school I taught at, I worked with construction companies and engineering companies until 1972. Then I went to RIT, actually Rochester Institute of Technology, and taught there for 24 years and retired 5 years ago. So this is my retirement pastime, I guess you'd say, and it's still continues. I'm going to try to get done in 45, 50 minutes. I have 72 slides, which means I'll have to go pretty quickly. I'd like to stop on them and get a lot of interaction, but I just don't know if I got the time. Maybe save it for afterwards. If somebody catches me in a drastic mistake or has something important to add, please raise your hand. But I'm going to start with the 1881 team. I know you've probably all seen this picture in the Chateauguay record. That was the, as far as we know, the first year that Lyon Mountain played. And according to the article, this was one of these 100 years of Lyon Mountain baseball, 1881, 1931, 1981. They did it, I guess, three different times. And this, the caption under the picture, this is the 1981 Chateauguay record, said that the picture was made just after they had defeated the Rouse's Point team 5-4 in a 14-inning battle. And then they listed the names of the players, none of whom I have met with names like that in Lyon Mountain. So sometime it'd be nice, I'd like to sit down and go over these names and see if anybody remembers any of those names or where did they go. But at that time, in 1881, it seemed like the mine activity was really starting to pick up. The 81 mine was just reopened. There was an article, and this is I was going through the Chateauguay Records microfilm. Very hard to read, harder yet to print. But it said in 1881, the bloomers and hammers men of the Chateauguay Lake Forges returned to their work Wednesday, accepting the terms offered by the company. The forge shut down work March 1st and has been idle until now. That was April 22nd. So And then another article said that the Catalan furnaces or forges down here had just gone into operation. There were 16 of them, just like that marker says, and it said 14 were in operation. That was the year of this game. Also, about that time, President Garfield was shot. And there was an article in the Chateauguay Record that said the Cummins, C-U-M-M-I-N-S, sometimes spelled with a G on the end, BBC, which I guess means baseball club. They used 2 words for baseball, that baseball. Of Lyon Mountain were the winners of the match game of baseball, played at Keysville on the 4th. They played a team from Burlington. The Burlington club had a professional pitcher from Troy, but that did not save them. They were whitewashed 6 times in 9 innings. Unusual phraseology. I guess it means the Lyon Mountain pitcher didn't allow any runs 6 of the innings. And it also talks about the Burke Baseball Club in 1881. And they played the Chateauguay 9 in 1881, so there was a lot of baseball being played back then. Also, a subsequent paper said, the Lyon Mountain boys who played ball at Keysville on the 4th do not speak in very flattering terms of their reception on their arrival in that village. After some time, they found a small boy who conducted them to a hotel. So I don't know what they expected, bands or what, but they arrived ready to go and nobody was there. So they took it out on their baseball team, which I assume, I don't know if they were going to a hotel. I assume that was not to get pregame refreshment, but maybe they stayed overnight. I guess they would have to go by railroad in those days. A lot of articles in there about injuries and deaths in the mines, not just in the mines either. The tanning factory, somebody getting scalded. Some family had just lost 2 children. One was drowned while rafting logs in the Saranac River, and then another daughter drowned, and kids were getting run over with wagons and burning to death all this year, just to kind of set the stage. Then later, again the same year, this is the Chateauguay editor evidently writing, there is way up in that wilderness, there is way up there in the Chateauguay wilderness at a place called Lyon Mountain, a baseball club called the Cummins BBC. This is for the information of the active BBC of Malone. This is that challenges were issued kind of back and forth in those days. That's the way they scheduled their games. And then it says on Thursday, June 23rd, if nothing occurs to prevent, an interesting game of baseball will be played at the fairgrounds in this village between the Cummins BBC of Lyon Mountain and the active, I don't know if that was active reserve or what that meant, the active BBC of this place. As both clubs make some pretension to skill in the game, an interesting time is anticipated. And then it goes on to say that the Cummins Club won, and that then later it said that the Malone team withdrew from the field after 6 innings and soon disbanded. So these were giant killers here. And then the editor goes on to say the Cummins are beyond all doubt the best in northern New York. They are to play against the Queen City Club of Burlington at Keysville. Well, I got a little bit out of order there. We will be considerably surprised if the Vermonters did not find their match. And that turned out they did beat Burlington at Keysville that day. And then the Cummins Ball Club of Lyon Mountain, having received a challenge from a Malone club to play a match game of ball, accepted the game and so on. There a lot of challenges went back and forth. There didn't seem to be formal schedules. And then finally here, finally I was coming and said, where is this game? I kept looking, trying to find this Rouse's Point game. That it says here, the much talked of match game, they refer to a lot, of baseball, 2 words, which has been on the table between the Cummins of Lyon Mountain and Winthrops of Rouse's Point will be played in this village, Chateauguay. All the while I figured, well, they just returned from playing Rouse's Point. They must have played in Rouse's Point. They didn't. They played in Chateauguay. Monday afternoon, September 12th, for $200 and to decide the question of the championship of Clinton, Franklin, Essex, and St. Lawrence County. Completely, I'm sure, very unofficial. And a lot of teams would probably take exception. The grounds selected for this meeting are on the River Road and so on. A red-hot game may be expected. Then they covered the game as best they could in those days, and it wasn't a 14-inning game, it was a 12-inning game, and it wasn't 5-4 in favor of Lyon Mountain, but 5-4 in favor of Rouse's Point. And I thought, well, I wonder if that was a mistake. Could they have played 2 games? It's a Chateauguay record. Couldn't be that wrong. Well, Bob Garrow, I don't know if you know Bob Garrow from Morrisonville area. He's an old-time, he played some pro ball and town team ball. He is writing on Clinton County baseball. And he gave me, let me borrow a book called Clinton County, I Remember When. And there's a reminiscence in there about the great baseball match between the Cummins of Lyon Mountain and the Winthrops of Rouse's Point. And it gives the same date as Chateauguay record did. It said it was for $100 a side, plus the championship of Essex, Clinton, Franklin, and St. Lawrence counties. The game resulted in a victory for the Rouse's Point boys by the score of 5-4. It was one of the first exhibitions of ball playing ever witnessed in northern New York. 12 innings were played. Fully 1,800 people were assembled on the grounds. They were grounds in those days. I guess like circus grounds or fairgrounds or parade grounds. The Winthrops, now being champions of the 4 counties, disbanded for the 1881 season, fully satisfied with their record for 1 year. Now that sounds like it was taken out of a newspaper, maybe the Rouse's Point paper, so I don't know if I've uncovered some scandal here, but it looks like the Winthrops of Rouse's Point won that game. This is what I call early team. I got this from Bill Dernan, and there are, Tony identified some players on there, which he thought there was, well, maybe I won't say Howard Chase, that's a name, Martin Compton, Herbert LePan. I don't know where that goes back. I would say, I don't know, early 1900s. From the cut of those uniforms, that's an early Lyon Mountain team. And this is the 1911 team. Again, I would like the identification of the players maybe leave for some other time. I'm going to have to go around those pictures down there after this and jot down a lot of these names. I know some of them. Incidentally, this was 1911. Just for some background of what was going on in 1911, there was a taped interview, maybe some of you, most of you have read it, by a Mrs. Baldwin, and she talked to Mrs. Golovach and her daughter, Mrs. Penalis, and Mrs. Penalis's daughter, Frances. And they did a taped interview, and part of it, this was on what was life like in early Lyon Mountain days. And I found it in the Plattsburgh Library, the library over at SUNY's Plattsburgh. And Mrs. Baldwin, I think, was conducting the interview, said, is that the same house you live in now? And Mrs. Golovach said, oh no, was end house down there. Not too comfortable, that house. Wind goes through in wintertime, no can't paint it, no can't paper it, can't do anything with it. And I wonder if these guys lived in any of those houses. And then she also talked about, Mrs. Baldwin says, and this is not easy anyway, particularly when you're telling me that there's not any running water and you have to wash not only yourselves, but all these clothes. And Mrs. Penalis, the daughter of Mrs. Golovach, is answering, oh, they were just filthy, and they had to be soaked, and those poor men had to wash themselves, and yet all that water had to be brought in for them, and it was heated on the stove for them, and then all that laundry was done by hand, and all that was done by the wife and by the family. And Mrs. Golovac said, and I was tired. It took all my strength. I had to start in the morning and to the well by noon, bringing it in. And then I would have to take chairs and put around, and she showed how she draped sheets on the chairs to keep people from looking in the windows while the baths were in progress. And she had to walk quite a ways for this water. And I got barrels and put out back here, and I carried water, carried. My knees would get red from the cold. And I'm just, it's hard for me to imagine these were apparently working 12 hours a day, and how they found time, energy also to play ball, and what their wives thought when they brought home dirty uniforms to add to the mining uniforms. I call that late teens, and the Jim Grogan in the back row, manager. Again, other Lyon Mountain names mentioned there, or could be identified. I guess you know that name. For that picture. I wasn't sure. One of the first things when you give a lecture, you should know your audience, and I wasn't sure who my audience was going to be. But I guess everybody recognizes J.R. Linney, who he was born, just brief bio, kind of fit him in. He came about the time of that team right there, if that was indeed late teens. Linney, J.R. Linney, Joseph Linney, known as J.R., he was born in the Scranton, Pennsylvania, anthracite coal country in 1888. And he came to Lyon, and he worked his way up, started at the bottom, and no education, no formal education. Became president of a coal company down there, and then was brought up here in 1919 by Delaware and Hudson to run the Chateauguay Ore and Iron Company. So he would have only been 31 when he got here. His wife was Elizabeth Davies, sometimes spelled Davis, and they both came from mining families. He left Lyon Mountain in 1944, wrote a novel called The Touch of Human Hands, which, as I read it, I'm wondering how much of it is autobiographical and how much of it is fiction. It's hard to tell. But in the novel, he did come to Tiger Mountain. He changed the names of things. He came to Tiger Mountain on the same date that he actually came to Lyon Mountain. And he refers to Danahow Prison and Pottsburg, New York. So he changed names, but I suspect those of you who have read it maybe can identify things that actually happened. His name was Jim Lane in the book. He was a single man in the book. And he talks about the doctor, who could have been Doc Marvin, and the nurse, who could have been Doc Marvin's wife. And it's hard to tell for me anyway. He died in Peru, South America in 1952 while looking for new sources of ore. This is how I got this out of a book on coal mining. This is J.R. started at the age of 10 as a breaker boy. They call him breaker boy or slate picker. And let's see if I can manage that. The coal came down this chute and had impurities like slate, wood, other types of rocks. And it came down and then came off the side. And these are breaker boys. They're all pretty young. And they started sometimes as young as 8 or 9. And this is where J.R. got his start. His father had been killed in the mines. And this was called the Breaker Boy Boss, and the caption underneath it said, the Breaker Boy Boss always carried a big stick, and he knew how to use it. So that was a tough beginning. There's J.R.'s oldest son, Bob Linney. He shows up in some of these team pictures. He was born in 1908, so he would have been about 11 years old when he came up here. He left Lyon Mountain in 1945 for the Mineville, Port Henry area. In 1950, he went to Minnesota to open up that taconite ore mines out there. And he recruited several Lyon Mountain people to go out with him. And he died in 1971 in Florida. And he also did some bobsledding. And this is evidently a Mount Van Hovenberg. And on his team there was, behind him, he's the driver, I believe it's Stakovich, Kaiser, and Gus Kling. And that's his brother, Bill Linney. He'll show up in some of the pictures as a ball player. Evidently pretty good. He caught and played outfield. He was born in 1912, so he would have been about 7 years old when he came here. He left Lyon Mountain in 1950 for Port Henry, took over after Bob left for Minnesota. He also took over for Bob in the bobsledding after Bob retired about 1940. He went several, that's why he's in the pilot's gear. He died in 1956 in Port Henry, quite young, 44. And just to round out the Linney family, that's Mrs. Linney on the left, and Mildred Linney, the daughter, sister of Bob and Bill. It looks like they're showing off their new fur coats there. I think that was taken in front of the Linney house, maybe. It's been condemned recently. This is the, I call it early 1920s team. Again, I see a lot of, by now, classic Lyon Mountain names. Levine, Linney, Linney, that's Bob Linney, right there. How old would you say he was, those of you in the front row? 10, 12? So if he was born in 1908, that would place this picture somewhere high teens, 1920, right in there. And there's a Dupree, Bill Dupree, Luke Sampica, Henry Ryan, Jake Toloski is the manager. Ralph Davies. Did I pronounce that right, Tony? Is Tony here? Oh, good. I don't feel as nervous now. Lawrence Farrell, and that's Daggett Rounds, is that right? Gene Welch, Joe Toloski, somebody named Weston, and Fred Revore. This fellow right here, Cliff Martin, is I consider one of the legendary players, at least as I read about him. I didn't know him, of course. He was born in 1895, served in World War I, his son told me, on the Mexican border, was a boxing champion in the Army, which he modestly attributed to his southpaw style. He was a left-handed pitcher. And he had a lot of nicknames, as many players did, but he had many nicknames. He was called Lefty, Speed, Speedball, among them. He fanned 18 Chateauguay batters in one game that I saw the write-up of, and another one he struck out 21. The game he struck out 21, he lost 1-0. The pitcher for the other team was Buzz Harrica, which is Chateauguay. He became principal here, and his brother may have been the catcher. I'm reading from the bio that's downstairs. Lefty liked to celebrate after games and sometimes before games. This latter tendency led manager Doc Marvin to lock him up the night before important encounters. According to local folklore, now we can call it folklore, we can call it hearsay, or we can say oral history, which kind of elevates it. And I've heard so many stories about Cliff Martin that he deserves some time. He seemed to have been a favorite with the Dannemora prison team. And I guess it was their first baseman there, Piscaric, once said, it's no fun playing Lyon Mountain unless Cliff Martin pitches. And you probably all heard the story of the planned riot when they would go to play Lyon Mountain. There's a man in Dannemora named Carlton Gilroy. He's a kind of a historian in his own right there. And he told me that he can remember, he was probably a pretty young then, a D&H train pulling into the Dannemora station loaded with the Lyon Mountain boys band and fans. And the band, they would disembark from the train. The band would lead them up the hill, all the fans behind, through the gates, into the prison, and play the game. And many teams played. They would advertise in the paper for come to the prison, see the game, lots of parking. The prisoners had nicknames. There was Smiles Ryan and I don't know, it was Big Six Klein. These were prisoners, and the papers would quote them and give their statistics. So this one day, again, as oral history has it, they were going to stage a riot. This is 1929. And the first baseman at a certain point would throw his glove in the air and the riot would begin. This was during the Lyon Mountain game. And Piscaric, who had this fond feeling for Cliff Martin, and I guess looked out and saw these families and kids and he couldn't do it. So he didn't throw the glove. The riot didn't take place till, I guess, 2 or 3 weeks later. Tony said that in the 1920s, the D&H Generals were a very good amateur team, came up from Albany and played on the old field and beat Lefty 1-0. But after the game, this is before it was fashionable, they lined up and one by one shook hands with Lefty. Here, I come across this. Sometimes when you're looking, I'm just looking for Lyon Mountain, but I get sidetracked by Garfield assassinated, or the Titanic is sunk, or World War Japs attack Pearl Harbor, and it's hard to keep looking for or stop and not read. And here was one where the Stars defeat Willsboro in a fine game. Now the Stars were the prison team, and I probably figured, well, I don't need to read that. But then somewhere in there, I saw subheaded, Martin, Lyon Mountain Speedball King, loses to Ryan in pitcher's duel. Now here's the Willsboro team playing this prison team, and who's pitching for Willsboro but Lefty Martin. And Smiles Ryan struck out 24 men, and Martin had 18. But he lost. So I guess Lefty not only played for Lyon Mountain against the prison, but many of the surrounding teams. And later on, here's a Plattsburgh game. They're going to play Lyon Mountain, and Lefty's scheduled to pitch. And the paper is saying they're a little concerned about that. And they mentioned that Lefty had ended the prison team's 16-game winning streak last year. So I looked back last year, how did I miss that? Guess who Lefty was pitching for that day? Ticonderoga. Now, again, this is part of the oral history. The prisoners, one of them said to Lefty, couldn't he go out and do something bad so he could come inside and pitch for them? And also, this is during Prohibition time, someone said that Lefty may have run a little moonshine at times, so he may have been just one load of hooch away from playing for the prison team. Well, here I'm talking about Lefty Martin, and I didn't even have his picture up, which is just a blow-up of the team picture. This is, Jerry Blanks gave me this. This was labeled Convict Team. So what year that is, we don't know. But that, I don't know if Smiles Ryan or Big Six Klein is in there. That was a convict team. This is, I'm guessing 1926 plus or minus team. Again, I'm taking lessons from Tony on the history. Now, is anybody here, that mill in the upper right, is that the sintering mill? Or sintering plant? And according to Tony, that was built in 1924, 1925. So also Doc Marvin's not in the picture. So trying to establish when Doc started coaching the team has been a little bit of, it's been a little bit of a problem for me. Whether or not he just didn't show up that day or what, but it looks like that's the old, so-called old field up by the Powerhouse Street. And this is the old field, which is titled Baseball Grounds again. And a copy of that appeared in Floyd Hyde, wrote a book called Forest, Fields, and Mines. And she had that picture in there, and she said it was 1929. Best I can determine, the new field was built in 1932. So this must have been you can see it's pretty crowded. And I think the ore sand was starting to come in. And because I guess that really picked up after the new mill was built. And later on, before the new field was done, the team played most of its games on the road. Some years, like 20 out of 25 games. I don't know where the 5 were played. This is early 1930s team. Now one player here, this is Doc now. Doc's appearing here. Doc Marvin, Bill Kowaleski, and Curly, or Duke Chase, is that? Yeah. I'm getting so I know some of these players. Bill Linney looks different in every picture. I think I had a discussion with Pickles and Archie Tulaski a few weeks ago when he was up here, and they got in quite a disagreement on whether or not that was Bill Linney. What's an out-of-towner going to do? There's Tom Marvin, which must have presented a quandary for Doc Marvin. There was also Lefty Kowaleski, that was a first baseman who was pretty good but pretty short. And here's Tom Marvin, who, depending on who you talk to, was pretty good or not so good. Tall, evidently a fast runner. Here's one of the rounds, Teddy Rounds. I haven't covered the Roundses very well yet. And just recently finding out that the part that they played. This player right here, does anybody recognize him from there?
Yeah.
You don't?
Chet Rutkowski.
Yeah. Chet Rutkowski was a University of Vermont player, very good player, University of Vermont. I had the opportunity to I think Jane Kelting set me up with Judy Rutkowski, now Ivy, lives in the Syracuse area. She let me look at her scrapbook, which may or may not be the missing Doc Marvin scrapbook that everybody's hoping to find. But it was mostly on information about Chet. Pictures of the, well, I'll get into the romance part in a minute. But things started to change. I think things somewhere in there started to change a little bit. There was a telegram in there addressed in 1930, June 1930, addressed to Chester Rutkowski, Zeta Chi House, Burlington, Vermont. It's been a fraternity man. And it says, guarantee you $50 per week, 13 weeks employment as carpenter's helper, association to make up the balance. Wire acceptance, collect, report for game June 8th. H.R. Marvin. So this is, now I've always heard of Doc, if he was a little light in a position, he would always look towards Vermont and go to Vermont, bring a player, not necessarily a college player, but bring a player. Well, here's Chet. Some people refer to him as the paid players. But he came and I guess I'm going to talk more about him a little bit later. Here's the this was in the Chateauguay record, we'll assume it's correct. says the 1933 Lyon Mountain Miners baseball team standing in attention during the salute to the flag ceremony. So it's 1933, that's the new field. And later on, I'll get a story about Doc Marvin that says it was addressed, dated 1933, and he said last year the new field was completed. So I'm saying the new field was built, finished 1932. The 33 team played on it. 1934 was when officially that Northern League with the college players came in. 34, 35, 36. Now here's a 1933 letter. It's addressed to Dear Bob, and it's addressed to Robert J. Linney. It's from J.R. Linney. Bob, it has been called to my attention that the 3 baseball players who are supposed to work 8 hours per day on the ball ground buildings and other work at the ballpark have been rather careless about getting to work on time in the morning, not returning to work on time after lunch, and then leaving before quitting time. I wish you would talk to these boys and explain to them that this kind of thing is noticed and commented upon by others, and of course makes it bad for me. And he's chewing Bob out that the ball players, and I've also heard that too, that if things got a little slow, these so-called carpenter helper ball players would take batting practice and things like that during the day. And also, was another, and this was in the scrapbook, October 1933. It doesn't say who it's from. Sounds like it might be from Bob Linney, my guess. He's asking the Plattsburgh paper, it's addressed as sports editor of Plattsburgh, New York. He's asking to put in the team record for the year. And he said they won the Northern League of Baseball, defeating Chateauguay. And he's also saying that Malone and Tupper Lake laid claim to the championship also. This is common in those days. And he's put Bob, or I say Bob, I'm not sure. He said the Tupper Lake team were all from Kentucky. In fact, they were called the Kentucky Colonels, and they were. Most of them were from Kentucky. The manager was given a Kentucky colonelship, something like Colonel Saunders, I guess. And he brought all these Kentucky boys up, and they played in Tupper Lake for several years. And the Malone team was drafted from various colleges and professional outfits far away from the northern New York area. Of course, he's got 3 or 4 players himself from outside. And then he says who are the officials connected with the team. And then, this is 1933 now, Dr. H.R. Marvin was team manager until July 15th, when the duties became too arduous and he resigned in favor of Robert J. Linney, who piloted the team the remainder of the year. Dr. Marvin remained on the official list as booking manager and on the advisory committee. So I know there's been a lot of speculation why the Northern League now is just on the horizon. They're playing more and more games. Doc Marvin's getting up in years by then. So I can see kind of both sides of that. On the one hand, maybe they wanted to, since they were going to bring the Northern League in, they wanted somebody more professional background, baseball. And I think Doc must have been getting pretty tired too. If there's a mining accident and somebody says, where's Doc Marvin? Oh, he's up in Rouse's Point with the team. I don't know how that would have gone over. So at any rate, 1933 appears to be Doc's last year, unless he came back afterwards. This was another team of that era. Doc, now that's Bob Linney, might have been this year, or the next, I don't know if the next year, if that's Doc in his advisory capacity or not. There's Doc Marvin, a blow up from one of the team pictures. He was very good friends, Porky Bingle told me, with Harry Landry, who was manager of the Rouse's Point Texaco Stars. And Porky said he didn't think Doc had too many close friends, but he was close friends with Harry Landry. And the Rouse's Point paper really says some nice things about Doc in sometime in I'd say it was in September. So maybe they realized Doc is retiring, and they compare him to Connie Mack. There was a very nice article in the paper. Doc answers, "Thank you for the nice things you wrote about me. He'd like to share credit with team members in the town." And then he said, "I refer most especially to Joseph R. Linney, Vice President of the Chateauguay Ore and Iron Company of this village and President of our Baseball Association. Mr. Linney always preferred to remain in the background and conceal the good that he did. Whenever it was a question of money, he gave it generously. His automobile furnished practically all transportation free of charge. And if a group of fans expressed a desire to attend an out-of-town game, he would see that a bus was made ready for their conveyance." Now here's hometown boy Bill Kowaleski. Whenever I talk to the old timers, he's one of the first ones mentioned. He was a down and dirty third baseman. By that I mean he evidently stopped anything that came near him with his glove hand or his bare hand or his chest. He had a wicked throwing arm, and was scouted by the Red Sox. Didn't sign a contract for a number of reasons that I've heard. And I'll talk more about him later, maybe when I mention some of the other players. This is Chet. This is the Vermont player. He came from Poland with his family as a young boy, settled in Rutland, Vermont. Let's say came to Lyon Mountain in 1930, played until 1934 when he was just going back to finish medical school. So he was a heavy presence for about 5 years. And the headlines many times were Rutkowski wins own game, Rutkowski pitches shutout, Rutkowski this, Rutkowski that. He was a key player. After he graduated from medical school, he went down to Poughkeepsie area and he was a surgical intern. He played down there, and Francis, by then his wife, Frances Marvin, kind of lovingly kept many clippings of how he was doing down there, which seemed to be very good. That is Francis and Chet. Soon after he came to town, I guess soon after, possibly they met when he was at the University of Vermont. Chet was a classmate of Tom Marvin. So somehow this arrangement, he came to town, and they were married, 4 years after he came here. She went to St. Lawrence, I believe. Here's the 1935 Northern League team. This is the so-called, depending on who you talk to, college team. When I first heard it, I heard it referred to it as the college team. Now, there was some resentment in the hometown here because once they came, there weren't too many hometown players that could play. And the only hometowner in a uniform is Bill Kowaleski here. Everybody else is, well, except there's Bob Linney, here's Gus Klein, and the Bat Boys are Lyon Mountain kids. I was talking to one old timer in the area, and I used college team about 3 times to him. He says, "You keep saying college team." He says, "They weren't colleges, they were professionals, they were paid." He's kind of mad. I think maybe he wanted to play at that time. And they brought in players from Syracuse University, many of them. This guy right here was Joel Vavra, V-A-V-R-A, was a college football star, a basketball player, a baseball player, and he was on the boxing team. And this is George Miner, who stayed on to teach at Lyon Mountain, outstanding pitcher from Syracuse University, played pro ball. And this is Bill Hafer, about whom I also heard an awful lot of things when I come to Lyon Mountain. More about him in a minute. This was the 1935 team, by the way, swept through the league and the playoffs. They beat Plattsburgh in the playoffs 4-0, won the Northern League. They were in, so the Northern League, as I follow, was 34, 35, 36. This is 1935. This is the pitching staff. That's George Minor. That's Klarnick, Mike Klarnick was his name. Steve Peek, P-E-K. Some people tell me he went with the Yankees afterwards. Smiling Jack Kennedy, who Carlton Gilroy, who was blessed, like seems like many people in this town with great memory, said he was always smiling. They called him Smiling Jack, and the other teams didn't like that, especially if he was beating them. And this is Hafer, left-handed pitcher. Now, Hafer came up to this area. I had a long merry chase trying to chase down Bill Hafer. Finally, at Syracuse University, I caught up with somebody who referred me to somebody else, and I found his daughter in Massachusetts. She told me about her brother in Minnesota, and he sent me quite a bit of things. Let me borrow them, including this picture, including all these 1935 pictures. And that's Bill in the dugout. He, at Syracuse University, did a few things like president of the student body, captain of the baseball team, and evidently between his freshman and sophomore year, came to Plattsburgh as ROTC. And there's a picture of it, Plattsburgh Barracks, it's titled. And it's one of the few pictures that he's not in the middle. Maybe that's because he's only a freshman. Most pictures, Hafer is always not in the middle there either. But on that team picture, he's right in the middle, front row, and it seems that's where he ends up a lot. So he played for Plattsburgh in 1934, and then somehow got to Lyon Mountain in 1935. And at the end of the season, here's the columnist of the Plattsburgh paper. He said, this is after the season is over and the Miners have won. So, before all this potential discussion concerning the strongest all-Northern League lineup and batting order gets steamed up too much, we'll save a lot of time and trouble and mental fatigue by nominating the entire roster of the Lyon Mountain Miners, who not merely proved themselves the class of the loop in the regular season, but stood our majors on their respective heads by sweeping the 5-game playoff series with 3 quick straight thrusts. So he's saying the all-star team is the Lyon Mountain team. And he mentions Hafer in here. Says Bill Hafer and the rest of his troopers are a grand bunch of fellows who play the game hard and played to win, and you can't feel hurt when you know the better team won. Good sport. Now Hafer was a pretty good ball player. His son, among the things he sent me, here's a professional contract with a Class B team. In 1931, which would have been the year he got out of high school. I don't think he signed it. And in 1937, the Rochester Baseball Club was after him, as having been recommended by the Asheville Club. And in 1939, the Savannah, Georgia team is still interested in him. Now he stayed on. At the end of the 35 season, both he and, they had a celebration at which Hafer was given the MVP award. I saw that little clipping in the paper, the MVP award, which answered a question his son asked me. He says, I have a trophy here. This is in Minnesota on the phone. It says MVP 1935. I have no idea what it means. I think the problem's been solved. The celebration was at J.R. Linney's camp. And he brought the whole team in, and evidently they gave Bill the trophy. His name wasn't Bill, his name was John. His mother named him Bill after Wild Bill Hickok. Here's, because he's always playing cowboy in the backyard. Here he is here coaching. He coached, I guess, all sports, was athletic director. And then he went to Saranac Lake. His son sent me a letter he wrote, which I don't think is violating any confidence here. He's writing his future wife, who he met in Saranac Lake. She was from Michigan. Her name was Jean McConkey. And he starts it out, Dear Jean, feel 10 years older tonight as I played my first ball game today. No date on this letter. As usual, lost 2-1 and have been taking the responsibility of this loss. I don't know what he means by that, if he's taking it on his shoulders. He mentioned that the ice had just left the lake, and he says, sometimes I wish I could go to the Belgian Congo. Now this is evidently written when he's teaching here in Lyon Mountain early in the season. I wasn't sure if that was his high school team, but I think it's the town team he's playing for now, because it's Sunday night. And today he just lost his first game. And he tells her about the Hollywood is being remodeled. He says, remember that place I took you to last summer? He says it's got a new dance floor. You wouldn't recognize the place. He also said something, now if they would just keep the drunks off the dance floor. And also he said that he thought he was getting in a rut and he was going to return his contract unsigned to the school. So he's getting a little itchy. He says, I don't know what I'll do this summer, but I think I may play ball with Saranac Lake again. So, and this is, and I haven't got that year down straight, what year he went to Saranac Lake, but he taught here evidently for a few years. And he says it's a good way to make $700 or $800 in a summer. Now, Hafer appears to be kind of the all-American guy here, was. Now, just to top it off, good baseball player, good athlete. Here's a letter from Selznick International Pictures, addressed to John Hafer, Syracuse University. It's dated 1937, so by then he was up here. Selznick International Pictures, New York. You have been recommended to us as one who might possess screen possibilities. Would it be possible for you to come to New York someday during your Easter vacation so that I might interview you in regard to our forthcoming production, Gone with the Wind? Sincerely yours, K. Brown. Clark Gable beat him out. I don't know if he went or not. His son said that Hafer was always kind of conflicted between acting, professional baseball, and education. Now, the Army interfered with some of those. Here he's down in, this is again sent to me from his son, he's down in Fort Hood, Texas. He's a battalion commander. That's him in front. I zoomed in on him, I could recognize him. Here's Captain Hafer, tactician, dashing young armored infantry commander. And that's later life. He was full bird colonel in the reserves. Also won the Bronze Star. I'll have to pick up the speed here a little bit. Here's about 1940, Bill Robinson coach team. We're starting to get into the Slave and Chase, Bill Kovaleski era. About the same time, here's a kind of a fuzzy picture of Slave and Chase, longtime second baseman. When I was talking to Hawk Islis, I learned for the first time that Slavin threw under him first, especially on double plays. And I was just wondering if Slavin, could you kind of demonstrate that for the audience? Just pretend it's a double play. Now, on a double play, well, you can just come up. So you can see it. I don't want you to hurt your hand on the cue there. He probably wasn't a heck of a lot bigger when he was younger. But let's say, now, so one thing you do is the runner, as he's trying to slide into you, you have to take some sort of action against that. So just stand there. Let's make believe I'm the shortstop. I'm Johnny Kovaleski. The ball is hit to me. It's a runner on first coming down, one out. And Slavin is coming across second and throwing at first. Okay, here's the ground ball. Runner, you would probably be a little unenthusiastic about going in the way of that ball. There's Johnny Kovaleski, Bill's younger brother, played shortstop for a long time. It was Bill Kovaleski at third, Johnny at short and Slavin at second. First base seemed to rotate around between, who were some of the first basemen of that area? Jake Toloski, or who was the Toloski?
Jake Toloski.
And Padgett.
Buddy Padgett.
And Johnny was everything very smooth. Again, Carl Gilroy says his memory of Johnny Kowaleski was he always looked like he had just stepped down from a bandbox. And Bill Kowaleski looks like he had, his uniform looked like he had just come up out of a sandbox. Johnny stole home once to win a game against Saranac Lake, so I assume he got a little dirt on his uniform then. This is Tommy's father. There's the 52 banquet, and over in the left-hand corner, that the only youngster in the picture is Tommy Kowaleski. That's about the age he was when the scouts started following him. 10 years old, Pee Wee League. There's about the 1955 team. They were sponsored by Carling's Black Label, hence the black uniforms. And it seemed to me the game I saw in Messina with dark uniforms, like that. In 1963, I don't know the details, but here's Bill Dernan. Let me stay on that. 1963 Adirondack League champs. That previous team won a knockdown, drag-out battle about 1952 against Saranac Lake for the Champlain Valley Championship. And I'll show some of their players in a minute. In 1965 in Churubusco, the game that was supposed to be played in Lyon Mountain, daylight today, so they called up Churubusco, and it was nice there, so they went there on a cold day. They won the St. Lawrence Valley League that year, according to 1965. This is 1975, that's Glenn Petroshoon. That was the last championship, as I understand, before the 1999 team. They won 24 years. He was, both his trophies they're the championship trophy and MVP. This is Bill Dernan, who co-managed with, I think, Francis Kowaleski that year. And he has been a longtime supporter of me in this quest. Spent a lot of time at his house, drank a lot of his coffee. He and Shirley have been real nice. I asked him to pose for a more up-to-date picture. I thought it'd be kind of neat to show Bill Dernan then and Bill Dernan today. And it was something like that. The shadow, his hat kept causing a shadow. So I said, this was a couple of years ago, I said, Bill, just tip your hat back, will you? So I can get a better shot. He said, what kind of a ball player wears a hat like that? So he wouldn't do it. Here's the J.R. Linney Field, once called Grover Hills Field in Mineville, where on July 3rd, for many years, there was a game played between Lyon Mountain and Mineville under the lights. And they had some historic battles over there. It went on for about 10 years. In one contest, Archie Toloski was the catcher, and it was the last of the ninth. And which means Mineville, I don't even know what the score was because they didn't seem to write up those games very well. The Mineville runner put a desperate effort to score, and it was a low throw. And Archie went down for the throw, and Gordon Sprague was the runner that tried to go over, and Archie just came up, and Gordon Sprague went sailing. And Archie, the ex-football player from Muhlenberg College, and came down in a heap. And the umpire called him safe, Slavin tells me. And he says he still hasn't touched the base, but Gordon Sprague ended up with, I think, broken shoulder. And but he did come, I talked to Archie about it, then I tried to get a hold of Gordon Sprague. Thought it'd be neat to bring those two guys back together again. Not quite sure what would happen. But Gordon had passed away, and Archie said, I never meant to hurt the guy. He says, all I did was bring it up. Now, one reason Bill Dernan suggested the umpire call him safe, see if you think this is possible, that when he was down getting the throw, Gordon Sprague was going over him, and he came up. It's possible he didn't touch the ball. Possible? I don't want to start any more scandals. We got one going already, but Rouse's Point. Now we're going to turn another Lyon Mountain victory into defeat. I won't do that. There's a lot of stories about the Linney Cup, but I'll just have to keep. This is 1928 high school, and Doc Martin's in it, or Doc Marvin, which makes me wonder, was he coaching high school about then and then went to the minors? There's some more high school pictures. Here's Tony. That's Leo Allen, Prof. Allen. Here's Tony Shuzda. Looks like he's sucking up to the coach there. A little more playing time. Here's another one. There's Edie Shuzda. He's now the favorite of the coach, evidently. Although notice that Allen has his hand on Jerry Blanch's shoulder.
Holding him down.
And Jerry had won 2 games that year against, I don't know if it was that year, Mount Assumption Institute of Plattsburgh, which is not a small feat for a small town to do. So maybe he's kind of being nice to Jerry. There's another high school team of the era. Here's Tommy K. Tommy Kowaleski doesn't need much saying other than he had 7 years of professional ball in the Yankee chain, went to spring training twice with him. If you look downstairs, you'll see clippings galore. And then he came back. In my hometown, we had players would go to the pros and they'd stay a few years. When they came back, they never played hometown ball anymore. They figured, oh, that's it. Tommy did. Here's number 19 on deck, a scene which many opposing pitchers did not like to see. That was in the 1975 75 championship game against Peru, we think. There's Pickles Tulaski, also signed a pro contract. That's a high school. Couldn't get a very good picture of him in uniform. Highly sought after left-handed pitcher. Came out of high school, unfortunately, the same year as Johnny Padres. I heard from every pro team except the Dodgers that the Padres signed with. Went over to Vermont that summer, as recommended by scouts, to get some seasoning in the Northern League, which is now over there. Didn't get much playing time, so came home and had a heck of a year with the minors. The next year went south with a Waterloo, Iowa team down in Arkansas, and he had a bumpy road, hurt his arm after a winter in Lyon Mountain. The guy had him throw hard for 45 minutes. His arm was never the same again. Tried to make him an outfielder. He didn't like that, so he came home and late in the year, after playing with about 4 pro teams, and played with the minors the rest of the year. Not too long. Here's Pickles in the Army. He was on the rifle, up in the upper right there. He's on the rifle and pistol team. And here's the naturalist, Pickles. He said he went to the American Legion once and sat down at the bar next to Tommy Kowaleski. And Tommy was, "Oh, what are you doing with that stuffed owl on your shoulder?" And went back to having a beer. Well, the next time he looked over, the stuffed owl had turned his head and was looking at Tommy. And to say he was startled is understatement. There's, of all things, a Merrill team. It's courtesy of Jerry Blanch. And I'm giving Jerry credit. A lot of these, and I guess I haven't for other people, I got the things from a lot of sources. Ed Furness, who went out to Minnesota and became president of the Reserve Mining Company right after Bob Linney. So did Bill Kowaleski go out there. So did many Lyon Mountain people. There's a Chateaugay Ponies team of 1931. This big guy back here is Pete Bush. There was a man in Chateaugay that told me a lot of old-time stories. His hero, he's 80 years old. He said his boyhood hero was Pete Bush. He says, "You want to see where he lived?" I said, "Yeah." So we ended up in North Burke, Burke is pretty small. North Burke is a lot smaller. We went to the cemetery. This is just this month, a hot day, black flies everywhere. And he brought me to Bush's grave. That's Bill Twaddle of Chateaugay. and he told me a lot of things. And there's where Herman Bush rests. Bill said he was a good guy to have on your side if a fight broke out. This is the Saranac Lake team of about 1952. This is the pitching and catching staff. That's Bucky Roach. That's Fats Fulbear. He was a pitcher. Fats Fulbear, catcher Rube Steels, catcher manager, and that's Bullet Bill Ellacor. I thought people might remember them. I did make a trip out to Babbitt. I was up in that area, so I went out of my way to go to Babbitt, is where the first wave of Lyon Mountain people went in early 50s. It's iron mining country, quite remote, and I found a Linney Street there. There's only one house on it, but I stopped at a quick stop. It's not too much in Babbitt. It says, is there anything named Linney around here? And the girl said, well, there was a guy behind me, and he remembered that street, so I went down and took a picture of it. And this is Silver Bay, where they moved from Babbitt to Silver Bay later. And I went down there. This is on Lake Superior, where they have the big mill. This is their little logo for the town. That's Rocky Taconite. Taconite is the rock that they get the iron ore out of there. Maybe Lyon Mountain could get something like this. And I talked to Corky Karufsky. Betty Levine is his wife. She wasn't there that day. He told me some stories about early Lyon Mountain. I talked to Doris and Charles Vincent, who moved from here out there. They told me some things. This is Bob McKillop in the Saranac Lake Library. I was hoping maybe he'd come today. He told me a lot of things. He knows more about Bill Hafer than I think Bill Hafer does. He's a retired professor from Paul Smith's, and just has a great memory, like a lot of people I've met. This is Mrs. Rybash. Her husband played on a 1935 team, and it's a long story how I ended up there in Auburn, New York, but right here is the way I got that picture of the 1935 team. It was a long story. That's an hour in itself. But she was fairly young, 16 when he was playing, and so she outlived him. Another player on that team lives in Auburn, or lived. His wife is still alive. Here's the brothers Tulaski, Archie, catcher, and Pickles, pitcher, outfielder. That was on Father's Day just this past year at their camp on Shazy Lake. These are also my sources. I got a lot of stuff. Needs no introduction. Sitting in the center aisle there. Jerry Blanchett is home in Merrill with the 1940 trophy. That was the team he played on, and they won the Champlain Valley League that year. Porky Bingo with his miner's hat on in his garden. We've got right up on Porky downstairs. He came out of high school when the Northern League was here. There weren't many openings, so Doc sent him and several other Lyon Mountain boys over to play for Harry Landry's Texaco Stars. And they one day he told me a nice story. They were playing in St. Johnsbury. I'm not sure if that was with the Texaco Stars or not, but they had to leave home early on a Sunday morning. They missed Mass. He had the Kovalevskis with him, and Paul Marvin was driving, wasn't a Catholic. So it was too early for Mass here, so they're driving to St. Johnsbury, a long trip. And along the way, they stop at 3, 4, maybe 5 different Catholic churches. And each one is just letting out, or it's not an official Mass, it's too late. So after about the 5th stop, Paul Marvin said to him, "How many times do you Catholics have to go to church on Sunday anyway?" And I don't know if they did make Mass that day. I don't want to, this will be the third scandal which I won't go into. And there's the old second baseman who throws underhanded. I got him out of an hour of painting one summer day. And he talked with us and came out and posed. caught up with Tommy at the Sportsman Club, and despite the no walk-ins, I did get in, and he showed me a big pike he had just caught. He's got his Lyon Mountain hat on too. There's an uncomplimentary picture of Tony taken at railroad days. He's been a big help with his razor sharp memory. Again, just to close with Bill, since I've spent an awful lot of time with him, this to me, he's talking to his catcher on the St. John's Academy team. He coached there for a few years. And that pose strikes me as pretty characteristic of Bill. I don't think they're discussing attendance at the game at that time. Bill told just a couple short stories to end. I'm sorry I'm going over here. He said he was catching, or he was umpiring, because he umpired too. Porky umpired. Porky started a lot of umpire associations and umpired, and Bill, who was a catcher himself, umpired. And he was catching, and Tommy Kowaleski was batting. And they were playing Cherubusco. Lyon Mountain was playing Cherubusco. Tommy was playing for Cherubusco for some reason. I think he played for them when he got out of the pros. And Mike Perry was pitching for Lyon Mountain. And Bill said Perry had a pretty good curveball. And he got 2 swinging strikes on Tommy with the curveball. And as he crouched behind the catcher, take his umpire's position up, he said, all of a sudden he said, uh-oh, he's going to try to throw a fastball. He says he got mixed up between his catcher role and his umpire's role. And Perry came in with a fastball. And followed by the crack of the bat, Bill said he lost the ball. There was a big barn way out in center field someplace, and it just kind of disappeared as it headed over the center field fence. And he said, I never did see it come down. And since Cherubusco is pretty close to the border, I think that ball might have made an illegal entry into Canada. And one other story he told, he's umpiring, and now Tommy's catching. And this is for Lyon Mountain. This will be the last story. Tommy is catching, and it's 14 innings. It's a championship game. It's an away game. The other team has a winning run on third, and Bill crouches down behind Tommy, and all of a sudden they both hear footsteps coming down the third baseline. Attempted steal of home. Well, Tommy jumped out in front of the plate, tagged the guy out by a mile. Bill calls catcher's balk, he called it, which is, he hadn't heard the term before, catcher's interference. Calls the runner safe because Tommy interfered with the batter. And so that means ball game, championship, and I guess Tommy's mask goes sailing in the air, and a little discussion followed. Bill said usually after, but he held. Run counts. He said that's interference. And so Bill said usually afterwards he would stop at the American Legion for a beer or two after a game. He said that night he didn't. So he went home only to be greeted by the silent treatment from his own family, which lasted 3 weeks, he said. But that night the phone rang, and he picked it up, and it was Tommy calling from the Legion. And all he said was, Bill, you made the right call, clunk. Hung up. And I mean, that story tells you, to me, quite a bit about Bill Dernan and Tommy Kowaleski. This could go on and on and on, and I'm way over. I'd just like to conclude it there, see if there's any questions. I don't know if you're getting hungry for hot dogs or any more demonstrations we'd like to run. Any old sliders? Somebody want to slide into home here? Very good.
In that cemetery in North Perth, there's a tombstone with an epitaph that says, Hark ye sinners as ye pass by, as you are now, so once was I. As I am now, soon you shall be. Repent, you sinners, and follow me. Some industrious soul wrote underneath it, to follow you I won't consent, because I don't know which way you went.
The local Legion Color Guard is out on the field, on the mound, near the pitching rubber. Very formal beginning for a fun, well, hopefully fun kind of game. We're going to have a donkey baseball game coming up. And the group going out there is the Merry Mountaineers. They're going to sing the national anthem and take me out to the ball game. Sorrel Woodward, American Legion Post from Lyon Mountain, Color Guard, under the directorship of Donald Pickles Toloski. There's the famed Lyon Mountain Ballpark. A few places, the only places, if not the only place in northeastern New York where you can enjoy a ball game out of the rain. And I'm not sure if it's been here since 32 or 33. Both of those years have been given, and I'd also heard 31, but what we heard earlier today with Bob McGrath's presentation, 32 or 33 appears to be the year that this park was inaugurated. Let the record show that the weather on this Bastille Day 2001 is more suitable for ducks than it is for donkeys. Just as they get set to get out there, the clouds open up. This is donkey baseball. We've seen donkey basketball. Well, I guess what do you do with a bunch of donkeys in the summer? Well, you've got to find something else to to do with them, so they've been brought in to do some donkey baseball. Hopefully the donkeys will enjoy this. The fans usually do, the participants usually do, but I'm not always convinced that the donkeys are enjoying themselves. We'll see what transpires here on this Saturday afternoon in Lyon Mountain. Robin Chase is coming out there. Not sure if she's going to be on a donkey. Bill, Bill Chase will be. Bill's got his own donkey. He asked if I was riding. I said no. I said I've seen a lot of jackasses at ball games before, but never any donkey, so this is going to be a new experience for us. A very small infield. Here's home plate. There's first base, that circle. There's second. Robin's going to be the pitcher, I guess. There's the pitcher's mound. And they run a string around here to represent the outfield, so you don't get very far. And they're going to use plastic bats and a plastic ball, I guess. Looks like this guy's a free agent here. He's roaming around, but he keeps getting caught in his own strap, and he almost escaped. The guy chasing him wasn't going very far. They got a PA system here, and they got this guy shouting in front of the crowd. We can't get back there to tape because we've got a fence in front of us, so instead of using the PA system, they're hollering it out here. Another escapee here. These guys better hang on to their jackasses because they think the grass is greener on the other side of the ballpark. It's that same fella. I think he's intimidated by that mule, that donkey. And this guy just might get out there. This guy is intimidated by that donkey and he's afraid of it. He is afraid of it, and I think he's ready to walk home. There's our batter. Supposed to be in contact with your animal at all times. Is he going to score here? Now you got another one that's a free agent. There's a hard hit ball. It's a fair ball apparently. Step ladder, there we go. I'm gonna ride him. Three outs. Don't ask me why. There are 3 outs. I guess you have to go all the way around. This guy just got thrown. He does not want to get ridden. Well, we got a pitcher. We're just going to watch another half inning here. Well, this guy is fast here. Whoa. Good idea to have your insurance paid up before you play donkey baseball. When they have their ears back, it usually means they don't want to hear anything. I think they're a little intimidated here. Here they come. We got a batter. That ball is hit deep. Another batter here. Another fair ball. Looks like a statue. Three outs. So there's one inning of donkey baseball. We've seen enough. I don't know about you, but if you want to see donkey baseball, come to Lyon Mountain. In the meantime, we're going to say that's the way it was. July 14th, 2001, at the Heritage Day festivities. Beautiful downtown Lyon Mountain. Thanks for watching and supporting Hometown Cable.